Good morning.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Good. Is it just us?
So far?
Oh, awesome.
Excuse me.
I have to find my page. I was writing stuff down.
Sure.
So I had a question about flashcards.
Okay.
So do you find it more beneficial to create your own flashcards, or I know there's some that you can buy yourself?
I do find it more beneficial to make your own because then they're like tailored to you.
Okay.
So if you go through that, those keywords at the beginning of the unit and then the key point review,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, there's something there that's not clicking, something you're not understanding, that could be a good candidate for a flashcard.
Okay.
Now you're right. You can buy like the big box. Dearborn makes the big box, and you can buy that. It's kind of like Trivial Pursuit. You know, you pull
Right.
the card out, look at the answer, and put it in the back. And it goes along with your book, and it covers everything that your book does, but it doesn't really customize it for your, you know, for your specific study needs.
Because I mean, I've been taking notes and stuff, and then you go back and you're like, sometimes I was writing them, and then I'm like, can I read my own writing?
Right. Because you get to go in a hurry. Yeah.
Right. Or then I'm underlining, or then highlighting in my book, and then the same thing, I'm going back and I highlighted too much, or I underlined it too much. Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's a lot. So hopefully you know, you're able to, like you just said, go back after class and review your notes, and taking those points. And of course, all math formulas go on a flashcard too.
Right. And I have to look over some of my notes because I took notes, and then I don't understand what I took to ask you. It's like MLS research first, so I have to read them again to ask you questions. Because I created a parking lot to ask you questions today, so then it's again.
Good time to go back and review.
Yeah. And some of these forms are so tiny, it's hard to read them in the book. Even, you know, I know that the forms themselves are tiny when you get them.
Yeah. You're talking like the RPodes, I have a feeling.
The forms that we went over.
Yeah. Most of them, we look in the online learning system.
Yeah.
We also have the RPodes in here for you and the MOG in here. So these that are kind of smaller in the book.
Yeah.
You can pull these out here. And like you said, I mean, they're small in real life, you know, but at least when you come to the online learning system, you could, this little box down here with the arrow is your download.
Right.
You could download, save it to your computer, and then make it big where you can see it.
Yeah, I did that
better.
too. It was just trying to go through them and look at them and in the right size. Maybe I need to put them up on my big screen and look at them.
There you go. And usually I have you guys, because I mean, the RPodes and the MOG is fine, but any other form that we look at, what's in your book is out of date. So I think just a good rule of thumb, just get in the habit of going to your computer and looking at them, online learning system.
The only thing I think the reason I'm having a hard time with some stuff is real easy for me, and then other stuff I'm having a hard time with some of the same words. Accounting and payroll is where I've spent most of my life, and a lot of the legal words are the same, but they have different meanings in real estate. So
Gotcha.
I mean, I know the words, but the same word, it doesn't have the same meaning.
Because it means something different here. And especially with you with
Right.
an accounting background. Like for example, when we get into unit 21, we're going to talk about debits and credits to buyers and sellers.
Yep.
And debit and credit in accounting world means something totally different than it does in real estate world. So
That's why
you're
I'm having
right.
a hard time with it's not the same. And so my mind knows exactly what certain things are supposed to be, and it's not the same. And
right.
it's thrown me for a loop because I know exactly all my life has been in accounting and payroll, and now it's not right.
Yep. Yep. You got to retrain your brain, don't you?
Yeah, and that's why I'm having a hard time. And John's like, well, you know these words. I'm like, but they're not the right words anymore.
They change the meaning.
Yeah.
And, I think that's, you go from industry to industry, and that's just, isn't it funny how you can go across platforms and just change everything?
Yes. So, I mean, that's why I read it. I listen to you, I go back and read it, and sometimes go back and read it again. And sometimes I read it out loud. So somebody will come in on me and I'm reading it out loud because reading it out loud actually helps me.
Absolutely.
You know, so sometimes I'm like back on chapter 1 again, trying to get it, because reading it out loud is to sink it into my brain.
Right. And, sometimes just to hear yourself say it,
Yeah.
that's when it becomes real, when you can hear the words come out of your mouth. So, yeah, I think reading out loud and talking to yourself is a great study strategy.
Well, and like you said, if you don't score at least, would you say a 70 or 75?
75 is minimum,
I was
yeah.
getting like a 60, and then I was getting like a 70, and now I'm getting like a 95. So,
Right.
Because I was getting the wrong word, or I was getting tripped up on not looking at the frontage, like splitting it with your neighbor.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, that one's just kind of, I don't think that one's fair.
well, and I'm used to being fast, you have to be fast,
Yeah.
fast on everything
Yep.
you do, and it wasn't slowing down enough to read the questions too.
Yep. Yep. It's and again, for most of us in the class, it's been a while since we've studied and had to take a test. So
Exactly.
it's just going back and getting your brain in the right place. Absolutely. So how are you feeling overall about agency units 7 and 8?
Better now that we did this past week.
Good.
The week before, I was just so lost after her class that I was seriously ready to just stop. It was so.
Well, and I think just, first time you go through agency, the second time's the better, the third time is better. Each time you go through it and hear it and see it, it definitely comes together a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, I tried reading it after class. I tried reading it the next day. It still didn't make any sense. I tried reading it over the weekend. It still didn't make any sense. I read it out loud. I just closed the book. I tried reading it again. It made a little bit more sense, but not until you went over it. Then what I read actually started coming together.
Good.
I had read it before. It
Mhm.
made no sense. And then when she went over it in class, it was in circles, like I said in my email. Everything was in circles. Oh, did I not turn I'm sorry, I didn't turn my thing on, did I?
Oh, that's okay. We're not we're not official today.
I'm sorry, I didn't know I didn't turn it on. I wasn't.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, it was a train wreck. Everything was just in circles all day. And I tried, and I asked her questions, I did a couple of chats in there, and then I listened to other people. Some of the people were confused because I know they were like chat in the chat, trying to ask questions, and I saw a couple of people doing this.
And that's just, that's day one on agency. Like I said, that's just, that's so common because it's so much. It's a lot to take in. And,
But I
and the problem
would be like,
is,
"You're
the
going to
commission says.
jail, you're going to jail." You're going to jail.
The commission says, look, this is agency, and then they leave it up to the firm to decide how they want to practice. It's not like the commission does the across the board, this is how we're going to do it. So the commission has this very large definition of agency, and now it's kind of up to the firm to make it smaller and tailorize it for, just for us. I don't know anybody out there that does it all, because it's too much. So I think what you'll find, are you looking to go into sales? Is that your,
Sales, yeah.
okay. All right. So you're going to find more than likely the firm that you join will just probably focus on residential sales. They may
Yeah, they
dabble in
do.
commercial, they
I
may
have an
have a
agency
property
I'm already
management wing,
go to.
but usually when you choose residential sales, that's what the firm focuses on. Now,
Yeah,
are
I
you
reached
here
out
in the
to a place,
Triad
in
area,
Windsor
or,
already.
I'm sorry?
I reached out to a place to mentor me and stuff already.
Okay, good.
And
Good.
they said that I could come in, but every Tuesday morning, I'm like, I got class.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's when they do their big stuff, is every Tuesday morning. They
Yep.
have every agent come in Tuesday mornings. But yeah, that wouldn't work for me.
In a few months or month and a half, you'll be able to go
Yeah.
sit in. So now, are you here in the Triad, or are you?
I live on the edge of Lexington and Winston-Salem.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, you're kind of in that area.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
So a lot of my questions were actually answered on Thursday.
Okay.
Because like I said, I created a page of everything that I wanted to ask you today. We kept going over and people kept asking questions and so on. And we went over a lot of stuff that day. And I guess a lot of it was answered in when we went over forms and things like that. And then a lot of people were asking questions at the end of the day. One of them was, when we get to commissions, and I know everybody's different and everybody does commissions different, but one of them that I had was basically when we hit the floor running, kind of in your experience, do we get commission right away? And I know you can't answer but in your experience, do we get any type of commission right away, or are we like some commission? Do we get our whole commissions? How does that really kind of work?
Most firms, you get paid when it closes. So when the transaction's a done deal is when we typically get paid. So, we earn our commission when we bring buyer and seller together.
Right.
But most of the time, we don't actually collect our commission until that transaction closes.
Right, but until we're a full broker, we still can get paid. It's just
as a PB, yes,
right.
Yes,
okay.
Yep. As a provisional broker, your license is inactive until you affiliate with a firm. And once you affiliate with the firm, you're under the direct supervision of a broker in charge. And your license will activate. And as an active PB under a BIC, you can pretty much do everything that a full broker can do.
Okay.
Because you're under that direct supervision.
Okay.
So
and it probably wouldn't change, or it might change depending on what they would do, but your percentages may or may not change. Okay. Yeah. That's what I wasn't sure of, because the amount of time was quite a considerable amount of time. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you're probably looking at it's hitting the ground running. I mean, it's very possible you may have somebody waiting in the wings for you right now, just waiting on you to get your license. But if not, I mean, they've always said, I've always heard that you guys should plan on about 6 months, give or take, on average, 6 months before your first closing, just to, get the client and then sell or help them buy and then go through the process, And that's finding buyer or seller pretty quickly. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So they say on average, you can plan on about 6 months.
Okay.
And so now if you have somebody waiting, obviously you can get them sooner, but when you first affiliate with your firm, yeah, they want you out there trying to get business, of course. But they're also going to be taking some of your time doing training and onboarding, and you have to do trading with the MLS, and you just got some upfront things that you need to do on day one, week one. So but yeah, you can usually get going pretty quickly once you find that buyer seller.
And then you also talked about insurance, and that was offered through the National Realtors Association.
Because the firms don't offer them most of the time because we're not employees. So yeah, I get mine through the NAR's marketplace.
Okay.
I just shopped around and that's all it is a marketplace insurance.
Okay.
So I just shopped around and they offered me the best, I guess, because of that membership affiliation. But yeah, you're not going to get it because you're an independent contractor. You're not going to get it as you would a benefit if you were an employee.
And that came out a few years ago for everybody, right? The 1099 people. Okay.
Yeah. Now, if you get hired, there's a difference in being hired by the firm and affiliating with the firm. So brokers, sales associates affiliate with the firm, employees get hired. So you might be able to find, some agents get their license and they find a place that can hire them and they can kind of get going in the business on the back end, through an administrative position and then get into sales that way. Some are just ready to get into sales. So it just kind of depends on, there has to be a job opening.
Right.
But they're always looking for affiliated brokers because there's your moneymaker.
Right. I like those big ones that we were talking about the other day.
Yeah.
Williams, is that what it was?
Yeah.
The one, the 400 just in the area.
In Kernersville. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't
remember
realize they were that big. That's who actually listed the house that we bought 15, 16 years ago.
Okay.
And they just drug their feet and wouldn't let us close because they're big. They don't have to.
They don't have to.
It
Right.
was a tiny little house, so they didn't care.
I did a post licensing class. This was pre-COVID. We were still face to face. And there was probably, 25 in the post licensing class. And we were going around the room introducing ourselves. And are you active or inactive? And if you're active, who are you affiliated with? And there were 3 of them with that KW in Kernersville that met each other for the first time sitting in my class. They were like, you're with that office? So am I.
That's funny.
And I said they were so big that they didn't meet each other until they got here. Yeah, and then you got, what we're starting to see more, I don't know what you would actually, more mom and pop, kind of smaller standalone kind of firms. A lot of agents are kind of breaking away. When they do want to go out on their own, they're breaking out from those big brands, those big names. So we're starting to see a lot of these smaller firms pop up. And those are usually more, I guess I'm in one of them. We have 23 agents, 24 agents right now. And, I know my agents. We're not just faces in the hall, So it comes down to preference. And, for you guys, especially getting your license and getting started, I understand compensation is important, but I also think getting started, other things that are important are things such as training programs and mentoring, coaching. Like you said, you're already talking to a firm. So I think especially getting started, I'm a firm believer that if you can get the proper training out the gate, that's going to position you and set you up for a career. The money will follow, as opposed to just
local in the area that that knows your community and reaches out to the community, and somebody that'll help you. Like with me, with my payroll and accounting background, we had to do the CLE credits and go to convention and that sort of thing. So somebody along the same lines that'll help you remember to get off stuff when you're supposed to.
Right.
Not scrambling at the last minute. I mean, we always did them, but then you have to keep track of them.
Yep.
So that's that's a big thing. Keep track of them. Go to your conventions, do all that kind of fun
Do
thing.
your CE. Yep, we do our CE every year. And of course, we'll talk about it. But the day after the deadline, Elaine's phone is blowing up every single year. I forgot to do CE. What do I do?
Or I did it, but where is it? Who kept records of it?
Yes, that's the other big thing.
So you had a thing that you showed, and I know it's in our slides
Mhm.
of questions, like the percentage of questions. Does that change every year, or is it pretty much weighted the same?
This is pretty much, it's pretty much weighted the same. When they, if they were to update that information, then they would update this booklet, because this does get revised frequently.
Okay.
So it's from what I've seen from year to year. I mean, I've never sat down and done a side-by-side comparison, but just kind of what I've seen from year to year. Yeah, this is the weight pretty much stays the same. We've always said 7, 8, 9, and 10 are heavily tested units. Here's 7, 8, 9, 10, these 4 right here. You can see there's a good amount, a handful of financing, which we're getting to, just various things. So the number, it may go up or down one number here or there, but for the most part, it's pretty much across the board.
Okay. And then no safety.
No questions on safety. Yep. But it's
Bring your gun or not, we don't care.
I wish they would take away. I mean, honestly, I still think they've done away with a lot of the math over the year. I have noticed that. There used to be a lot more math on this exam. And quite frankly, I don't know if 8 questions is still too many or not. So maybe do away with a math question or 2 and give us a question on safety. But agent safety is just such a personal thing. Again, there's no, this is how you have to do it. It's just, please be safe, and what makes you feel safe may not make me feel safe, so it's just a personal thing. But I always say it's the most important thing we talk about, because none of this matters if you're not safe.
Yeah. Well, my uncle's been in the appraisal business for, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how many years. And
Nice.
he's, well, why don't you go to appraisal? And I'm like, well, to tell you the truth, I'm on several different communities on Facebook, and there are so many people that, do you know this car? Do you know this car? I'm going to pop a cap in his butt. And I mean, on and on and on. Can you imagine walking into somebody's yard and not knowing why you're there? Because what if the homeowner's not there? What if they are there? You're just driving by getting pictures. This person's taking pictures of my house. Well, maybe they're appraisal.
Yeah.
Maybe they're a criminal. You don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, in this day and age, I mean,
It-
real estate people could be in danger as well, but when you're going into somebody's property as a comp house,
Yeah.
there's a danger there too.
Yep.
I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you say, a lot of people, they don't like the report, they don't like the findings, it's easy to, so, it's always safety, no matter what you do.
Yep.
I mean, you go to Walmart this afternoon, you need to, you need to be safe,
Yes.
so.
But just watching people, how they talk on the community pages and stuff, I'm like, yeah.
Is that like next door neighbor and all that? That's what I see all the time. Somebody comes knock on your door, rings your doorbell, and yeah, people go nuts. And I'm like,
Yes.
which, I mean, I get it. I don't care for people knocking on my door if I'm not expecting you or if I don't know you, but I don't immediately jump to that,
Jump to the bad
here for something bad, But I don't, I do think door-to-door solicitation, that's definitely decreased, that's definitely gone down. And I just think it's, people are more alert, they're more aware. And unfortunately, we have to.
Well, and criminals are more brazen now too, so.
Exactly. No, but as far as agent safety go, I mean, just When I'm showing a property, I walk in the front door, I let anybody that might be in that house know that I'm there, hello, hello. I mean, because I've walked in on, sometimes homeowners forget that you have a showing schedule. Maybe they tell their tenant, maybe they don't, so there's just been some awkward situations and, yep, I'm very loud, very clear when I'm coming in your front door, why I'm coming in your front door.
There was some, and the only other one I had, and I can't remember it, and I didn't write it down. Thinking it had to do with the water rights in North Carolina. Oh, I know what it was.
Yeah.
The water rights. Oh, here we go. Riparian rights. So no, it has to be. Tell me how to say this. Littoral.
Littoral, uh-huh.
Okay. When we have, say, a hurricane, so looking out at, say, Hurricane Matthew, for instance, down in Buxton,
Okay,
and when the hurricane came in and it took away the beach in Rodanthe or Buxton, and the houses, I mean, the beach was totally eroded away, and it says that you can claim your beach back. What does that actually mean? I mean, if it's actually taken the house and the house has fallen down, does that mean that because we were out there and they were pumping the ocean back, the beaches back in, does that mean that the house behind it now has that beach, for one, is what I would think. But then after reading this, what happens, that house is actually gone. What happens if, oh, I'm going to bring my house back? So the house behind them actually has beachfront now. But now I want to come back and actually put my house back on the beach. Can they actually do that? Based on reading this, it says I can claim my beach back.
sounds like it. Yeah, that's all new to me. Definitely beach market people would know that, but yeah, I mean, and it might come down to the city or the municipality or the county, it might come down to what they allow. So it might be what one beach allows, another beach doesn't, but yeah, I do not know the answer to that question, how you could do that, and what that would look, but that would be an interesting question for sure. An interesting scenario.
Yeah, it wasn't a fast thing, but I mean, it was the year, I don't remember what year it was. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. But they were pumping all the beach back in. And it was going to take a couple of years to be pumping it all back in.
I bet.
And they all had beach again.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, they deal with water issues and erosion and losing beach and acquiring sand. I mean, they do with a lot more down there. And that's why I do know there's some programs in place to help preserve the beach and keep it, like we love it. I mean, the dune projects and that kind of thing. So coastal management just in general. So yeah, it might come down to one of the plans on how they want it regulated, or it might just come down, it might be a local government thing. Do what?
You lost your house, you're all gone.
Yeah. And that's why you got a lot more insurance down at the beach for that beach house than what we do here. Good morning, Kydrea.
Hi, good morning. How's it going?
Good. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Yeah, today's my birthday, so I'm just
happy birthday.
Thank you.
What are you doing fun for your birthday?
So it was totally my fault, but I had plans. I really wanted to go to the quarry, which is at Kerrigan Farms in Mooresville. They were sold out for the day, so that was that. So now I think we might just go for a nice hike in a little, and then later on we have some dinner reservations, and so yeah.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
exciting. What a good day. And you can always get back to the quarry, right?
exactly.
Another reason.
But I honestly had questions on oral buyer's agency, just understanding that a little better for me.
Okay. Okay.
Um, because I know when we were asked, like when we were going over last week, it was just a little foggy to me still. And the idea of starting the oral agency and then when it goes into writing, you know?
Okay. So this the idea, I think in that word, excuse me, I think that word oral kind of, it throws us for a loop because, excuse me, we know in contract world, if you got an oral agreement, if you have a verbal agreement, you got nothing, right? That handshake agreement, that oral agreement isn't going to stand up in a court of law. And in contract world, oral agreements, handshake agreements don't happen. And I think that's why oral buyer agency is so hard for us to get, because how are we doing this? Let's call it a contract. Let's call it this agency agreement on an oral agreement, on a handshake. And the answer to that, and I think this is the key to understanding oral buyer agency. The reason that we can get away with it, the reason that it's allowed is because it's express. So even though it's an oral agreement, we still laid out those terms. We still have to have a conversation about what it means. Now, because it's oral, I can't bind the buyer. I can't make the buyer commit to me. I can't make the buyer commit to my firm. I can't make the buyer commit to paying me. I can't make the buyer commit to anything because it's oral, because all they did was shake my hand. So it's unenforceable. And this is where, for us as agents, license law and commission rule kicks in. So the real estate license law, specifically commission rule, says we will allow oral buyer agency as long as it's express. And we will allow you to act as an agent with this buyer under an oral agreement because, yes, it's a contract, but it's a different kind of contract. It's offering that agency. And you know, they don't want to give us a window to not offer that full service. They don't want to give us that opportunity. Well, if it's oral, you really don't owe them old car kind of thing, you know? So for us, kind of, it's almost easier to think if you're going to be a buyer's agent, you're going to be a buyer's agent. It doesn't matter if it's oral and writing.
And that the old cart was one of the parts that kind of mind blew, like, you know, threw me off also, is because like, where there's no written, you know, agreement to have disclosure about, you know, all these
That's
things
right.
obligated to this, but I guess is old car still given to the buyer because of agency?
Absolutely. You just hit the nail on the head, Hydrea. Because agency, because we're required. Again, I only got two categories of people I can work with. I can either work with a client or a customer, and that's it. Those are my only options. So if you want to be my agent, and again, the reason this is allowed for buyers is because it's a trust issue. You know, they just met me, and all of a sudden I'm thrusting paperwork at them saying, I need you to sign this and commit to me for 6 months. You know, it's a huge trust issue. So it's allowed to build that trust. It's allowed to form that relationship, but they still have to regulate how we practice it. They can't let us run amok, you know? So they still have to regulate us, and how they regulate us is if they say, you can do oral buyer agency. The buyer's not bound to you whatsoever, but you're going to owe them old car because that's what you owe this client. And that's what you're hoping to do. You're hoping to get this person to eventually sign that agency agreement. And I get it. And that's why I think if you just cover up that word oral, that tells you everything you need to know about it. What you're dealing with is buyer agency. And then they put those rules in place that says, this is when you have to get it in writing. These are the caveats, you know, non-exclusive, not a specific time period. But we got to get this thing in writing before we're ready to present an offer for you. You know, the thing with these agency agreements, like, let's just look at our buyer's agency agreement, for example. Even if we get it in writing, I meet a buyer today and I say, maybe my firm has a policy that says, I can't work with you. I can't do anything for you. I can't even show you a property until you sign this agency agreement. Firm's policy. So we enter into a signed buyer's agency agreement. I owe them Old Car, they owe me commission, right? That's what it says. That's our two-way street. I'm going to give you Old Car and help you find a property. When I do help you find a suitable property, you're going to pay me or make sure I get paid. So let's say we enter into this written buyer agency agreement for 6 months. We just put a term of 6 months in there. Is there any guarantee in that 6 months that they're going to find that suitable property? Not really, is there? I mean, I could take them out and show them one house and they could say, this is my dream house. I could take them out and show them 60 and we still haven't found the dream house. So even though I have this agency agreement that says I will get paid when you find the house, what's the catch there? They got to find that house. They got to find that property. You know, same thing with the listing agreement. I'm going to get paid when I sell your house. But what's the catch? What if I never sell your house? So just because we have this any kind of agency agreement, you know, it's still no guarantee for compensation. We still have that duty to, you know, help them buy or sell.
What's our exam date again for, I have it as our last day is the 31st of August. Is our last day of school.
Yep. So that's our end of class exam.
Okay. And then we have a retake if we don't pass it, but what's our real estate exam date? Didn't we put one of those in our calendar? Or we set that up separately?
You said that yeah. So once you pass the
Okay.
class, then you schedule your exam with the testing center.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And that whole application process and all that, we're going to go over probably not this week, but the following week.
okay. Normally, how far after school do we do that? Is it
That's
like
up to you. Yeah, that's up to you. Some of you guys are more and ready to go. Some of
Okay.
you want to take some extra time to study, you know,
Okay.
so that's entirely up to you.
Okay, is it similar to what we do in class? I mean, do we do like a similar one that we would be doing for the state?
So your state exam, like I said, is at a testing center and they'll sit you down in front of a computer and that computer will just offer you your test. So you'll
Okay.
go through, yeah, it's an online computer program as well.
Okay.
But you're there and you're on, you know, their device that just offers the test. And
Okay.
it's a testing center. So they have the real estate exam, you know, CPA, nursing, there's all sorts of people testing right there.
Okay.
Yep.
Pretty sure you go to the same place I
And
go to.
and for my last question, Julie, I know you said that we wouldn't talk much about auction sales,
Mhm.
but I only wanted to bring it up because it was one of the questions on this quiz and I got it wrong.
Yeah, sure.
But it says in auction sales, the answer, what I picked was licensee representing buyers do not have to review the working with real estate agents form with their buyers. Is that not true?
That is correct, because that's disclosing your real estate, your agency status to your buyer. So what they don't have to do is that, when we talk about they don't have to do the disclosure, that's the auctioneer, that's the listing agent to the seller. Is that, good morning? Is that, are you in the book? Are you looking at a question on the book or?
Yeah, so it's question, yeah, so I'm on quiz 7, or yeah,
Okay.
quiz 7, question number 25.
Okay, so let's see. Quiz 7, question number 25. Okay, so broker must provide the work of the real estate agent to their buyers. That's right, because that's a buyer's agent talking to buyers. Licensees representing buyers do not have to review. Written listing agreement between seller and broker is required from the outset of the relationship. Yeah. Licensees representing buyers. If you're representing a buyer, you've already done it. That might be what they're heading there, because they're kind of making it sound like you got to do it at the auction. But if you're representing buyers, you've already done that disclosure a long time ago, because you're already representing this buyer. So the disclosure should have already happened a long time ago. Does that make sense? That's kind of the way I'm reading that one, is it's a past tense. Representing buyers do not have to review. But see, they do.
So you're saying you still have to review the working with real estate agents form in an auction sale?
With the buyer, yeah.
With the buyer in an auction sale. Now, I thought that you didn't deal with, because it was a court, like if it was in an auction, then it was most likely going to be foreclosed, or, you know.
If the buyer's represented. Buyers can come into an auction represented or unrepresented. So if the buyer's represented by an agent, then yeah, they've already done that disclosure. Like back in the day for substantial contact.
So I wanted to, so the other day, I, just 2 days ago, I was like practicing in here with with my boyfriend, and we were, at first substantial contact, and I was gonna, I'm revealing my working with real estate agents firm, and he's like, you're making me feel uncomfortable. I said, listen, if I'm making you feel uncomfortable, I'm doing my job.
Pretty much.
He was like, no, I don't like, I'm not signing anything. I was like, you are literally what we talk about in class.
And he's not wrong, because think about it. You just met me. I just told you,
Yeah.
I'm trying to build your trust. And in trying to build your trust, what's the first thing I tell you? I don't know you confidentiality. It's hard to trust me when I'm telling you, you can't tell me anything confidential. That's so funny. That's great though. That's great. And what, Mary and I were just talking earlier. Sometimes when you hear yourself say it, so just having that conversation with your boyfriend, did you hear those words come out of your mouth and you heard yourself say it, and it kind of like, whoa, what was that I just said? That's great. I don't know if I'm going to say a lot of people are hesitant to sign the disclosure. but yes, there is some hesitation out there among among the consumers. And again, I can't blame them. So if I do have hesitation, I always go back. I sometimes joke, I really feel like sometimes I wish I came with a red bouncing ball, but I always go back and if it'll load. Well, I always go back and take my pen and point it out to him where it actually says, this is not, and it's underlined, not a contract. So if I have hesitation, I can say, look, here it is right here, and this is what you're signing. Kind of walk them through that. Yeah, but I think I've only had the one refuse to sign, which I get it. I mean, I met the woman in a driveway and I said, careful what you tell me, because I got to take it back and tell my seller. She's like, I'm not signing that. I'm like, it's fair. That's totally fair. Here it is. So yeah, we can actually go back and show them, actually draw it out. This is not a contract. All you're doing by signing it is by disclosing that you've received it, saying that you've received it.
Once I explained to my client that it wasn't a contract, we entered into a seller's agency.
So he was good with that. That helped.
He was good. He just needed to like, I went over it with him. Like, I literally read it word for word. And I was like, I'm gonna keep reiterating to you, this is not a contract. I'm not, building our relationship, and he was very understanding.
Good for you. Good for you. So you created that agency, just by explaining your role, explaining your status. The other thing, Kydra, to that point, a legally binding contract requires 2 signatures. This form only requires the seller. The agents don't sign it. So you can't have a contract if you don't have both parties sign.
And for the because he actually asked me a question in it, and I was like, I actually don't know. If there are spouses, do they both have to sign this form right here?
Yeah, anybody that you're going to work with. Yeah. So if you're helping, 2 sellers sell or 2 buyers buy, definitely have everybody sign it. And that way we all know we're on the same page. So
Right.
I think that's a good rule of thumb. Everybody that needs to sell needs to start signing on day 1. Everybody that needs to buy needs to start signing on day 1. And that way we know all those people will be willing to show up, to closing to sign the final. My husband and I bought this house 3 years ago, 2020, and I got to be our agent. I represented us. You darn right, both of us signed a working with real estate agent disclosure. I said, first substantial contact with my husband happened how many years ago, but if they ever want to see my paperwork, they're going to see a sign working with real estate agent disclosure for this transaction. So like, you're just going to sign it. I signed it too. I guess I figured when in doubt, sign it. Good morning, ladies that are just joining us. You're welcome to unmute and ask questions, or if you want to put it in the chat, or if you're just here to listen, welcome.
Do I need to have my camera on, Miss Julie?
No.
Okay. I was at work. That's the only reason why.
No, we're just all informal here this morning. How are you this morning, Latoya?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We're doing good.
Good.
Today's Kydrea's birthday.
Who's?
Kydrea.
Oh, happy birthday! That's
Thank
so
you.
exciting. Do you have any plans today?
So we're gonna I think like once everything's done here, we're gonna go for a hike or something, and then later we have some dinner reservations at 131 Main. So I've never been, so I'm excited for that.
Oh, I've never been there either. Wait, I don't even know what city you're in.
I'm in Charlotte, actually. I live in Charlotte.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Julie, question. What do you think the hardest part about is about understanding dual agency?
About understanding what?
Dual agency?
Dual
Like,
agency?
yeah, what do you think the most like difficult concept is to grasp about about that type of agency?
I honestly, I think the most difficult part about dual agency is the in practice piece of it. Is the whole idea that the brokers have to take a few steps back and can't offer that full old car. We almost got to take away some of those duties so we can have that equal representation. So honestly, I think that's the hardest piece of it. And for you guys getting started, especially because you come into this with, representing clients and the importance of representing clients and giving them old car and da 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 da. And then we come up with an opportunity where you need to take a few steps back and you can't give them that full service simply because that's not fair to the other side. And the in practice piece of it is not being able to be that advocate, not being able to offer that advice. So we're still fact finders, and I can still provide them, and I have to still provide them with the facts. But as far as what do I think, what offer do I think you should accept? Do I think you should counter this offer? What do I think? I think that's where the hard piece of it is. And it's, I think, a couple different ways that we can kind of combat that. One way we can kind of set expectations up front, have these conversations up front, not so much word it as if we're in dual, this is what's going to happen, but more of a just the process in general. So if we can have a conversation about, okay, once you find the house and you go under contract, now this is what happens, ABC. So we've had these conversations up front, and then that can kind of help guide them through the transaction. I personally, good morning, I've not done dual, but just a couple of times, a handful of times. And I think all the times I did, I've never done dual and not done designated. And designated sits better with us because it brings back that full service. It brings back that now I can give advice again and I can talk to my clients. So I think that's what sets hardest with people is in that dual, if you can't get that designated, that designation to come back. As far as dual itself, it's really, like we said, the simplest. Dual itself isn't, I don't want to say complicated, but dual itself, there's not much to it. Take that big definition or that big paragraph that explains it, and you can simplify it. Dual is one firm, one transaction, and two clients. That's what you're looking at there, and that's all it is. But for what makes it difficult is how we perceive our job being, like I said, that in practice piece of it.
So can I say something about that?
Please, good morning.
Good morning. My understanding with dual was I guess how I made myself understand it a little bit better was whenever it's dual agency and not specifically designated dual agency, it becomes super specific, like the one or maybe two agent that might work with the buyer and seller only specifically talk about the property.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And then you just don't talk about the clients at all, basically. But then
Yeah,
advocate for your clients when you don't talk about them.
exactly. So you're right, Joy. And it's that fine line, isn't it? So even though I'm in dual, I still have to do what's best for my clients, without giving that advice, without being that advocate. So, unless it's a material fact that affects the other side. Once I learn something confidential about my clients, I never have a golden ticket to run around and blab confidential information from one client to the other. Now dual agency says we could all go in the office and talk about our clients to each other. We just can't talk about our clients to the other, because dual agency, we're all in it together, aren't we? We're all in the firm. But there's a huge caution about discussing your clients in the office, because you could ultimately be preventing yourself from becoming designated if your firm offers that. So if the 6 of us are in the break room, you know, and Joy has a listing and Kydrea has a buyer, Joy may be talking about her listing. She's not talking about the people, but she's talking about her listing. And then Kydrea says, whoa, that's exactly what my buyers are looking for. So you guys are still practicing okay because you're brokeraging it, right? Kydrea is going to introduce her buyers to Joy's listing. Now the concern comes up, what happens when you two start talking about your people once you cross that line? So now let's say Kydrea's buyer goes after Joy's listing and we all agree to duel. Everybody agrees to duel, informed written consent. So buyer and seller said yes to duel. And now buyer and seller or one of you say, hey, let's offer designated. And then I have to get involved. And I say, Joy, do you know anything about Kydrea's buyer? And you say, well, we were in the break room the other day and Kydrea told me specifically her buyer's needs. Well, Joy, that conversation you two had just prohibited yourselves from being designated in the transaction that you started. Does that make sense? Because you crossed that line. And that's what you got to look out for, is that line. Now, what if we were a firm that didn't offer designated? It's just the 6 of us in the firm and we work closely together on a lot of things. So designated could get very blurry very fast. So my firm's policy, we're not going to offer it. We're only going to do dual. Now you two could sit in the break room your entire lunch break and talk about each other's clients because you're in dual, but you don't have that possibility for designation. Does that make sense?
That was a great example, Julie. That just helped me so much. That was a really good example.
So let me
Good.
confuse you
Hey,
even more.
I'm
What
glad.
if you're sitting at the
I
water
get
cooler
it.
and she says everything she just said, but I never opened my mouth and said, that's just what my person is looking for. And I just run back to the phone and said, I found you your perfect house.
If she says that to who?
Same scenario,
Uh-huh.
but she never said the words, I found, oh, that's just what my client is looking for. She never opened her mouth and said that.
Okay.
Can she still represent?
Sure.
Because she never opened her mouth and said,
Because she's got a client looking for a listing.
right. And
So
she
it
wants
just
to keep that
happens to
list.
be, it just
So she
happens
just
to
heard
be in our
that.
firm.
Yeah,
I mean, lots of clients are looking for listings. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we got,
right.
you know, just because they show it, just because they, you know, doesn't mean that they, you know, but you got a buyer, you know, you got somebody looking for a listing. So I don't think that would be considered that, you know,
Right. So she heard everything that she said at the water cooler.
yep.
She knows her client would be perfect for that house. Is that it's probably still going to be dual, but she wouldn't have to be taken out of the equation because she never opened her mouth and said that, right?
She could still, yeah, she could do dual. I'm not following the question, Mary. I apologize. Ask me this a different way.
So you said the reason that she would be taken out of the equation was because she opened her mouth and said,
Talked about the people's needs.
talking about the people. My
Yes.
client would be perfect for that house and so on and so forth. If she never opened her mouth and said anything about her client, then she could still keep that client, correct?
Absolutely. She could be dual and she could be designated.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. Sorry about that. Thank you. You can talk about the property and you can say, hey, I got a buyer looking to buy a house. You can say, I got a seller wanting to sell a house, because you do. You know, what we need to be careful are those specific needs. And even, I mean, even big picture stuff, like Kydrea could say, my buyer wants a 3-bed, 2-bath. Well, what did we just learn about Kydrea's buyers? For whatever reason, they need a 3-bedroom and 2-bathroom house. Is that going to affect them in their negotiations? Probably not. We're still talking about the property. So we can have conversations about our buyers' needs. And honestly, you guys, Mary, you were talking about sales meetings on Tuesday mornings.
Mhm.
Most real estate firms, that's part of our sales meetings. Does anybody have a new listing coming on the market they want to discuss? Does anybody have a buyer need they want to share? You know, we're not getting into specifics. We're trying to connect buyers and sellers. You know what I'm saying? So talking about your listing, you know, so Joy comes in the sales meeting. 6 of us again in the firm. We got a sales meeting on Tuesday. Joy comes in and says, hey, I got my new listing. And we say, ooh, tell us about it. She shares, and it's got a garage, and this is where it's located, and so many bedrooms and stories and nice backyard, you know, da 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 da. And we all sit there and listen to it. Well, if I'm the broker in charge and I'm not paying attention, I'm just letting Joy talk. I'm not paying any attention. I'm just letting her babble on. And Joy takes this conversation a step further and says, my sellers really have to sell because, or I'm listing this property at X amount, but I think it's overpriced. I think we're going to end up getting something less than that, right?
Yeah.
All of you now just heard that, right? So as the broker in charge, it's kind of my responsibility to make sure that y'all keep your mouth shut because by me letting Joy talk, what I did was prohibit any of you from ever being designated. So now if any one of you were at that sales meeting, if any one of you brings a buyer and I say, do you know something about my seller that could harm them in this transaction? You would have to say yes, because I was at the sales meeting. Sorry, guys, we can't offer designated in this transaction because I let Joy, sorry, Joy, I'm picking on you, but I let Joy run her mouth. I let Joy say too much. And that's where that fine line of talking about our clients, you guys, again, dual agency. Please always remember, dual agency is always and only about the firm. Dual is not what's best for the clients. Dual is about the firm. The firm is trying to satisfy 2 client needs. One wants to sell this house, one wants to buy this house. It just so happens it's the same property. And that's where the firm has to make sure that they're handling that properly for the clients, still offering the best that we can. And that's why our advocacy goes away. You know, I can't pit people together, right? If you were that, for example, another example, let's say you're in a dual agency situation and you're the one broker. You're one agent working with the seller and one agent working with the buyer. You can pull a CMA. They're both still your client. So you can pull a CMA for the seller to determine what offer to accept, for the buyer to determine what offer to make. But your CMAs for the 2, shouldn't they be the same? Shouldn't you be providing one set of numbers to the seller and a same set of numbers to the buyer? Wouldn't that be fair? Instead of working those numbers to favor the seller and working the numbers to favor the buyer. Does this make sense? So if you're doing a CMA and dual agency, you only have to do it once, and you do it once for both parties because that's keeping it fair.
So is, so sub, I think you clarified it just now, but just to make sure, sub agency is not a form of dual agency.
Correct. Because in seller sub agency, the buyer is your customer.
Okay. And also potentially because the firm or the broker who is working with the buyer doesn't have an agency relationship with the firm, the selling or the seller's firm.
No, because if the other firm, if firm XYZ brings a buyer client, then firm XYZ is acting as the buyer agency. And so for firm XYZ, this buyer is their client. So if we're acting as a dual agent, maybe it's your firm, maybe it's a different firm, doesn't matter. The thing with sub agency is that the buyer didn't hire anybody. They didn't hire you, they didn't hire anybody else. They've chosen to go through this completely unrepresented.
Okay, so even if it was an in-house transaction and I was the buyer's agent, but we didn't sign anything and they're just my customer, it would not be considered dual agency.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct. They've got to hire.
okay.
Yep.
Sounds good.
这3个提升颜值的要高，你一定要知道，第一，不方多年紧促 B 转高，脸上长痘可以涂它1天2次，能够有效抗菌消炎，特别是抠破的痘痘涂上，温和止痛，促进皮肤愈合，以及护理。
And then I have another question. On page 159, trying to find it. On page 159. 158, 159. I was curious, can I have some clarification on when the buyer has to sign a contract with the buyer's agent? Like when is, let me see here. What was I getting at? So from what I understood, you can have the oral buyer agency agreement, but you cannot have an oral buyer agency agreement to submit an offer to purchase and contract.
That's it. That's
Okay.
it. So what oral buyer agency says, we can work under an oral agreement at first. And the reason we can get away with working under an oral agreement at first is because it's an express agreement.
Mhm.
So I'm never allowed to just start acting like your agent. I have to have a conversation about what it means for me to be your agent. That's what I mean by express. The terms have been clearly stated. So we could, Joy, we could work together under an oral buyer agency agreement for a day, a week, a month, 5 years. We could work together under this type of oral buyer agency agreement for as long as we want, until we get to that point where you are ready, or I am ready to present an offer on your behalf. And that's the latest moment, the last moment that we have to put this agency agreement in writing. Now, there's a difference in writing an offer on your behalf and
It's
presenting an offer on your behalf. And so it's important that we see the word presenting an offer. You know, I can write it up. What I mean by writing it up, I'm filling in the blanks. I'm asking you, Joy, how much do you want to offer? Joy, when do you want to close, right? I'm filling in the blanks of the offer. I can send it to you to sign the offer under an oral buyer agency agreement, but I cannot present it. I cannot submit your offer to the seller and or listing agent if this isn't in writing. Our buyer agency agreement isn't in writing.
okay.
Now, the other two pieces of that, I can't demand exclusivity. If I say, Joy, I'm going to be the only agent you're going to work with, we got to get it in writing. You cannot demand exclusivity in oral, and you also can't require for a specified period of time. So again, I'm going to show you houses for a week. That's a trigger to me that we need to put this thing in writing, because I just specified our timeline together.
Okay.
Now, we could do buyer's agency for a day. You could do it for a week. You know, so if your buyer's still reluctant and they say, well, I'm in town for the week. Okay, well, let's just sign buyer agency for a week. And if during that week I help you find the one, then I can proceed as your agent. But if you don't find anything in a week, we're done, you know? So there's no limitations to the length of our agency agreements. It's usually just kind of dictated by the market, the situation, the firm's policy. You know, there is no set in stone. This is how long we're going to work together. And if I do try to set that in stone, then I got to put it in writing. I got to set it in writing.
Okay. And then I had a question, but I think yesterday in class or Thursday in class you answered it for me. If there was a specific list or order that contracts and disclosures are supposed to go out. I know working with real estate agents, disclosure is utmost importance, the very first thing that you ever talk about. But as far as like then having the agency agreement or the buyer agency agreement or the listing agreement, those are kind of up in the air. There's not a specific order.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. So you can have several different scenarios. You know, if we're going to do oral buyer agency, for example, I get you to sign the disclosure today, but I'm not going to have an agency agreement until you find the one and we're ready to present an offer on your behalf. You know, is that going to happen this weekend? Is that going to happen in October? Right. Now, remember with the listing, anytime you're working with the seller, We cannot perform a single service for the owner of a property without having it in writing from the inception. So pretty much in the for sale situation, for rent as well, but in the for sale situation, as soon as the seller says, I'm going to hire you, that's when we need to get it in writing, once they decide to hire you. And that's where, Joy, it gets tricky, because there is no, this is the way it's definitely going to go down. You know, you may have the seller call you and say, I want you to list my house. Can you come over and talk to me about it? So you're going to go, you know, with paperwork ready to go, right? You're going to go under the impression that you're getting this listing. You may also have the seller say, we want to sell our house and we're talking to 3 agents next week. You know, so you know, when you go, they're probably not going to be ready to sign anything right then. But when they call you after next week and say, we choose you, now we got to get that paperwork, because they've agreed to hire you, and you know you cannot continue, you cannot proceed until you have that listing agreement in writing.
And it would be okay to be like, you're there for your listing appointment and say, hey, when's your last listing appointment? Like, can we go
Sure.
ahead and schedule a date for me to be back here? That wouldn't be counted as soliciting other people's clients, because technically they haven't
They're
signed
not a
it.
client yet. That's exactly right. They're not a client yet. You're trying to solicit this business until they decide whose client they're going to be. So could you ask questions? Of course, you can always ask. There's never any rule that says you can't ask. Now, does the seller have to tell you that they are in a competitive listing?
No.
Thank you, Kadri. And I forgot to tell her happy birthday again. The seller doesn't have to tell you they're in a competitive listing. So even if you can ask, are you talking to other agents? That would be a common way to word that. You know, are you talking to the other agents? They could choose to answer you. They could divert the question. They could, whatever. So.
Perfect. Okay. I know if anyone has questions, please interrupt me. I'm kind of just going down my page.
Mary's.
On one, I wanted to tack on to the end of one that she had asked. So if you have an agreement, or the oral agreement that you had, and then say it leads into an agreement for a buyer.
Mhm.
I know with a seller, there's usually, a typical agreement, but we didn't actually touch on a buyer agreement. How long do those normally run?
Again, it's all negotiable, and we're going to touch on this. This is like the last thing we have to do in Unit 8. So our buyer agency agreement, again, all of our agency agreements have an open term.
Okay.
So this agreement is good for, and we're going to put a date in, a specific
And you
date.
could terminate those anytime you want as well, even like say you start looking at houses, you look at houses, and you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna stop. I'm not finding what I want, I'm just over it, and you just stop looking at houses. It doesn't
Then
matter
it's
because you still have a contract.
right. I mean, the buyer's pretty much gonna, if they're not looking for anything on the market, I mean, it wouldn't terminate, but it would end on the expiration date. So if there's
Okay.
2 weeks left in our agreement and you stop looking, in 2 weeks from now, we're going to be done. I can't force you to go out and look at houses, right? I can't make you buy anything. So Mary, if you feel like you've exhausted the market and nothing that we have available is going to work for you, then it's going to kind of fizzle itself out, But within that 2 weeks, if you try to go rogue and go after for sale by owner, guess what? You're still in an agency agreement with me that says,
Right.
When you buy a house, I get paid. So even sometimes buyers, like I said, sometimes buyers think they're going to go rogue. Well, I contacted the for sale by owner, so I don't know my agent commission. Yeah, but that's what the buyer agency agreement says. When you buy a house, I get paid.
Okay. That's all. You can continue, Joy.
Thank you. Okay, so mine was on situation number 3, page 163. And my question was, the specification on whether or not you would have to have written consent from the buyer before showing the property, or just before you made an offer on the property. can I
Let's see.
read situation 3 and the answer for you?
Yeah, so let's see, and I'm looking at it, if you guys have your book.
Okay.
So yeah, seller agreement authorizes dual and designated in the listing. So we got that. Buyer agency is in writing and does not authorize dual agency. Now the buyer wants to see one of the company's listings. So without reading the answer, just kind of talk, just kind of have a conversation. Let's see what we got here. What we're dealing with. So we got buyer and seller,
Mhm. The phone.
buyer and seller. And right now the buyer's out, you know, the firm's in dual, that's right. So this is what we're looking at. The seller has said yes to dual agency. The
Mhm.
buyer initially has said no. So where this stands right now, I cannot proceed. I cannot show this buyer this listing because my buyer has said no. Now, it's not over yet, right? Guys, this is what I know. Sometimes people change their mind. You know, when you meet somebody on day one, maybe you met this buyer on day one, you explained dual and they said, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. We said, okay, you're going to get exclusive representation. And now fast forward, we've been looking at homes for 4, 5, 6 months, right? They have changed a little bit than what they did on day one. I'm not going to say that they're exhausted yet, but they've changed a little bit from day one. So now here we are, fast forward to month 6. My firm lists something that the buyer's interested in, but I say, remember on day one, you said you didn't want dual. So this is where I say, I think that sometimes we just have to revisit dual throughout the process because dual comes up and goes away, right? We go in and out of potential dual, you know, frequently. So now that we're here again, the buyer has an interest in the sellers, in this seller's property, and we're here. Revisit dual. And if your buyer changes their mind, we can get them, we have to get them to change their mind in writing. We have got to get them to change, to cross out the no to dual, initial and date it, and then allow dual because they have said no in writing. And if they still refuse to change it in writing, their written agreement says no to dual. So I cannot show you this if you don't change your mind in writing.
Hmm. Okay, you can't even show them the property. Doesn't have
That's
to get as far as to the contract.
because they said no.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
with me? They
Yeah.
said, I don't want to see anything that your firm has listed. I don't want to put myself in the situation. And now their dream home has themselves in the situation. And honestly, that's exactly why dual is allowed, because sometimes the buyer wants to buy your firm's listing. And the only way that we could do that is to have something like dual agency.
And you could even go as far as to just tell, if they're still hesitant, just tell them like, we can sign a dual agency, a dual agency agreement specifically for this property, right?
Yes. Yes. So we could do a buyer agency, you know, like you said, just for this one, you know, enjoy it. Obviously, if your firm offers designated, because that is better for the client, right? That brings it back in for the client. And so if your firm offers designated, we obviously have that conversation up front, but like, look, I understand dual doesn't sound good, but we have the potential for designated. That kind of sets a little bit easier with them, you know, that we have to have the other side's permission as well. But at least now they know they have a chance to get that exclusivity back.
Right.
You
Okay.
know, another common, I think a more common, let's say you are going to list and the seller has said no to dual. And you have a buyer that's agreed to dual. Again, I think for the seller in this market, the seller hasn't had time to change their mind. You know, in this market, we're getting on the seller under contract in a day, a week, whatever, you know, month maybe. So in this market, it's not a big deal. But as that pendulum swings back, we may find sellers sitting on the market for 5, 6 months before we get a showing, before we get somebody expressing an interest. And now you've had the seller with their home for sale for 6 months and they said no to dual originally, but now fast forward 6 months and you have a buyer from your firm show up. Isn't your seller more likely to change their mind to allow that dual now because they're 6 months into it? So as that pendulum swings back, and we see ourselves coming back into a buyer's market, I think we're gonna see, especially with the sellers, them changing their mind. And again, we would just have to amend the listing agreement. We would just have to update it. Cross out an initial, the notable, and then get that in writing.
I have one more.
Yep. Cool.
Number 3 on the extra quiz, for unit 7, the extra quiz.
In the online learning system.
Yes.
So
What-
number 7, this quiz
Let me see.
or
Extra quiz.
extra quiz, okay? And then number 3. That's it. Which of the following would be dual agency?
Yes. And so a broker in charge assisting a buyer client in the purchase of a property that was listed by a provisional broker of the firm. That's a prohibited, you can't do that. Right?
The BIC and the PB cannot be designated
Right.
opposite of each other. They can be in dual.
What?
Because dual is about the
Firm.
firm. So they can be in dual. Everybody's in dual. The firm and all the agents are in dual when we allow it. The rule says that the BIC and the PB can't be designated opposite of each other.
I did not expect this. This is so funny. Okay. Okay. But in dual agency, well, I guess so in dual agency, let's say I'm the provisional broker and you're the broker in charge.
Okay.
If you're the broker in charge, you're not, even if it's your listing and we're in dual agency, you're not gonna help I wouldn't say help, but you're not gonna make or advise upon a decision that they should make. Hold on a second. You're not gonna
Nobody can advise in dual.
right. So what if I need you to advise me though, as the provision?
What I'm advising you on is, did you order the home inspection? Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? Again, we're all in dual. This is very similar, Joy. Let's go back for just 1
Okay.
minute. That conversation where you and Kadrea and the water cooler, you guys under dual, technically, you two can talk about your clients because we're in dual. What you're doing is prohibiting yourself from being designated. So now back to this. In dual, we can talk about it. And as your BIC, I have to, because I gotta, set you out right? So as your BIC, I have to. And that's why, because I'm talking to you about it, by default, I cannot be designated opposite of you because we're talking about it. You and Kydrea can't be designated because you talked about it. Me and you can't be designated because we talked about it. And that's where that commission rule comes in. Because if I'm doing my job as a BIC, we are talking about it. My PBs and I are talking about it. I'm with you. I'm telling you, did you order your home inspection? Did you do this? Did you do that? So we can be in dual, but we can't be designated. Same thing earlier. You and Kydrea can be in dual, but you can't be designated because you shared that information. So that's the problem topic. That's like the big problem topic from unit 7. They can be in dual. And you see in the test question, I need you to see the word designated in the test question. We can't just assume designation. So which of the following would be in dual? So the BIC assisting a buyer client, the purchase of property that was listed by a provisional broker of the firm.
And I chose D, a broker finding a buyer for a property the broker personally listed, because that's also dual, isn't it? Or no?
Well, maybe I'm just looking for a buyer. I don't care if they come from my firm or somebody else's firm. I'm just looking for a buyer for my listing. If that buyer from my listing happens to come from my firm, now we're in dual. But this doesn't say that. A broker finding a buyer for a property that I listed. That's my job as a listing agent, isn't it? That's what I do.
Oh, I
Tricky,
see how they
tricky,
got you there.
tricky.
Oh my gosh, wait, can you say that again? Do you remember what you said?
That's just my job, is to find a buyer for the property that I listed.
Duh. Okay, okay,
I
okay.
don't care. I don't care if they come from our firm or if they come from another firm. I don't care. I'm
Right.
just looking for a
A
buyer for
reputable
my
name
listing.
buyer. Yes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, Mary.
Thank you.
I actually wrote down the little boxes that you did the other day. With you had 4 boxes, the PV broker, broker.
Yep.
That might help her. I don't know
Yeah,
if you.
let's
wrote
look
it
at that
down.
again. And like I said, this is the. Yep, there it is.
That one.
So they can't be designated because of their relationship. Because you hit the nail on the head. They can't be because they're sharing information, because I'm a good Vic and I'm doing my job. So you are under my thumb. You do not do much without me knowing about it. And that's the BIC and the PB's relationship. As your BIC, expect them to be in your back pocket, right? As you get started, as you go through as a provisional broker. So because of the very nature of their relationship, they know the BIC should know something about the PB's party. So because of that, they can't be.
Or your mentor
designated.
or whatever.
That's right. And then the commission rule says any other relationship can be designated. So you can designate a PB opposite of a PB. You can designate a PB opposite of a broker. You can designate 2 brokers opposite of yourself. The broker in charge can be designated opposite of a full broker. Any other relationship is allowed as long as you haven't received prior confidential information. So let's go back to in practice. Remember, there's what the test is going to ask you, and then there's in practice. Not all BICs do sales. Some firms don't allow their BICs to do sales. Some firms do allow their BICs to do sales. And if the BIC does sales, the BIC very well may have a policy that says, I'm not going to be designated, because how can I be designated when I either know or could find out very easily these people's information? You know what I'm saying? So some BICs may have that policy. Again, that's the in practice piece of it. The commission will allow a BIC to be designated opposite of a broker as long as they don't have that prior confidential information.
And they're not in designated. That has to be dual.
They can be designated opposite of a full broker as long as.
Provisional broker. When
That's
you're
right.
a provisional broker in a BIC, it can't be in designated. It
That's
has to be
exactly right.
dual. And
That's exactly
okay,
right.
that helps. So thank you for mentioning that, Mary, because that does help. And then the other thing that you said that stuck was the key word designated, because that's what brings back your exclusivity.
That's
Whereas when you
right.
don't have it, it's all
It's
open
about
to the firm.
it's all, dual is all about the firm. Can we all agree with that? Dual's not what's best for my buyer. Dual's what's not best for your seller, because they're losing services, right? Dual's what's best for the firm and trying to satisfy everybody's needs. And this is why it's so foreign to us, because, we tend to think of relationships where we're represented. For example, you hire an attorney. That attorney represents you, don't they? That attorney, you become that attorney's client. But if this has to go to court, you're not going to have one attorney standing in the middle representing both parties, the plaintiff and the defendant, are you? The attorney is never going to be in dual agency. The attorney's only going to have one client. So again, I think it's real estate that makes this idea of 2 clients weird.
There was, in unit 7 on page 176.
We'll see you Tuesday. Thank you.
Bye. Mhm.
Number
Number,
you said 176?
yes, 176 in the book. Number 2,
Cross it
I,
out.
yeah.
Okay.
I had done it and I got it right. And then you said cross it out, and I was like a little bit confused as to why. So you just,
Because the ones that I had you guys cross out, they give the impression, they give the implication that, all right, let me back up. This is what we used to say. I don't want to cause confusion, but this is what we used to say. And we've just
Okay.
recently corrected this, and I'm still waiting on the book to update because we got good clarification. We used to say, if you have, let's go back to our dual agency situation. So you got buyer on one side, you got seller on the other, and of course the firm and all the agents are straddling the wall in dual. All right, let's pretend that this is still an oral buyer. We're owing them old car, buyer agency, but they haven't signed anything yet. If the seller has said yes to dual, remember their yes is in writing. It has been from the inception. And the buyer has said no orally to dual. We used to teach that if you had one yes and one no, as long as either party was oral, you could always change it orally. So maybe a better example, you get the seller that says no to dual, here we go, and then the oral buyer that says yes. That might be a better example. We used to teach, we used to say that because the buyer's yes was oral, the seller can change their mind orally. And then we got some clarification last year, 2 years ago, that said, no. The buyer's agreement and the seller's agreement are two different things. These are not the agreements to each other. And so because the seller's dual is in writing, the only way for them to change that is in writing.
okay.
And that's what of both the buyer and the seller, because the answer is A, and I mean, that's what I selected when I went through this as well too, before I crossed it out.
Mhm.
If it obtained both the buyer and the seller represent them as dual, if the first obtains an oral permission, and obtains a written before anything.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
again, that's the impression that it's giving. Well, I got one party yes orally, so I can change them all orally. And
Mhm.
again, I think where the clarification, my aha moment, dual agency is an agreement between the firm and the person, not the people. It's not between the buyer and the seller. It's about the buyer and the firm, and it's about the seller and the firm.
Okay. That makes sense. And it was funny because when I was answering it, I was like questioning it because I had just answered number 1 a specific way. And I was like, this kind of goes against what I just said I knew in number 1. So,
And that's where, yeah, I kind of, I don't know when they're going to update these books again, but I mean, print media, you don't have to wait long for something to change. And now you got something out of date in your book, and
yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, that's just
exactly.
the way it goes. As soon as it comes off the press, there's something that,
Might as well
so
repeat it now. Okay.
I'm not expecting this change anytime soon, which is why I have notes for you guys just to,
Perfect.
to cross these out. But that, again, and that other one I had you guys cross out as well, somewhere else.
It was one
That
of the
gave-
situations.
Yeah, it was, 162.
Mhm.
Again, it kind of gives you that impression that a party agreed in orally, so they can change it orally, and that's not.
Okay.
Basic contract rule says if
Everything
it's in
must
writing, it can only be changed in writing.
got it. And so then a question like that won't be on the test.
I doubt it.
Okay.
I doubt it. Yeah. But if it is, the only way to change something in writing is in writing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now this oral, again, oral, we just have a handshake agreement. So back to, if the buyer says no orally
Uh-huh.
and the seller says yes, and then the buyer later wants to see something your firm has listed, we can get them to change their mind orally. Because they haven't signed anything yet,
Right, but not for the seller.
but not for the seller.
Okay,
The only way for the seller at this point to change would be to do it in writing.
okay, that makes sense. Alrighty. Well, I think that's all that I had. Okay.
That wasn't too bad.
No,
Good.
No, I'm having a lot of fun with this, like a lot of fun.
Good.
Yeah, so I'm super
Good.
excited.
Good.
And it helps even more so. Are we the only two on here now?
Latoya's still on.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know if she's listening or not, but she's.
She's connected. But it just helps to have you as our instructor because you just do such a great job of explaining it, and you teach in a good you teach in the style that is best for me to learn.
Good.
So that's super helpful. Like when Nancy came, I was like trying to fight myself because I was like, this isn't Julie, like get upset. But I was like, no, it's okay. You can learn from her too.
Exactly.
And then I'm serious though, like that's a real internal conversation I had to have with myself was like, slow down, it's okay. You'll be okay.
And I totally get that. I mean, you get used to, you get accustomed. I mean, Nancy and I are saying the same thing. We just present it differently, you know, so you just get used
Exactly.
to different ways to present it. And, you know, we
Yeah.
get this a lot when we get into post licensing, you know, because they want their pre-licensing instructor to get through. Well, I mean, you know, post, you got more instructors. I got a different schedule, you know, da 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 da. So
Right.
we got to break you off at some point, you know.
And I will say though, with Nancy, I was present the whole class, and the one thing, like I understood everything she was saying, but the one thing that I feel like the way that she explained it made it click so easily for me was sub-agency.
Good.
Because the way she explained it out, at first I was so freaking confused. And
Yep.
then we talked about it, and once she said this one thing, it clicked, and I was like, perfect. Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And isn't that the case? I mean, you know, it's just that one, let's call it your aha moment. You know, it might be somebody says something or you read something in the book or a test question sometimes. I mean, this is why I like, and I don't know where you are in your study, but for me personally, this is one thing that's so good about the online learning system. Some of
Mhm.
these questions are, you know, kind of these interactive questions, because it's not a matter of getting it right or wrong. It's
Right.
a matter of learning why
Yeah.
it's right or wrong. And
Yeah.
for me personally, this is where the aha moments come,
Same.
is relating this to, you know, the information.
Yeah.
So you're using that,
Yeah, I love it. I really love it. That's why I was saying like I'm actually having so much fun. And I think it's perfect because I don't know if I shared this already, but I just feel super supported like with this learning system and everything like that, because I feel like it's so easy for people to introduce you to fear really soon when it comes to this class. Like, oh, it's so hard and the worry, right? And then to start and like it already be not bombarded, but just like super supported with like, we have this for you and this for you and this for you. And I'm like,
nice.
I'm gonna be great. I'm gonna be okay.
Good for
So,
you.
yeah,
Good.
but cool.
Good.
Okay, great.
And that's exactly what this program is meant to do. So I appreciate you sharing that
Yeah,
with
super.
us.
It's lovely.
Good, good.
And you teach post licensing also?
I do 2 of the 3. I do
Okay.
301 and 302. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
So.
All right. Well, I will let you go, but I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
You too. Thank you so much. And we will see you on Tuesday.
I'll see you Tuesday.
All right. Sounds
Bye.
good. Bye.